the topic that we've got today is why do crowdfunding campaigns fail? Majority of crowdfunding campaigns fail, and that's terrible.
The sad reality.
Yeah. Some campaigns do better on some platforms than other platforms. For example, if you're going to go crowdfunding on Kickstarter, they have a failure rate of around 61%. So 39% of all campaigns succeed, but 61% don't. Now, it's very difficult to actually work out what the success or failure rates are on other particular platforms, but the general perception out there is that about 70% of all crowdfunding campaigns fail. So we certainly don't want anybody in this group to experience the same thing. So let's have a look at some of the reasons why crowdfunding campaigns fail. So Ellie, when it comes to crowdfunding, to me the biggest issue is your crowd. You need a crowd in order to go crowdfunding, and some of us have got natural crowds. In other words, we've built up a crowd beforehand. Just think of a band, for example. They have fans, so they have a crowd. Most charities, for example, have already built up a group of supporters, so they already have a crowd.
Yeah, I think a crowd is one of the ones that I'm hearing surprises potential crowdfunders a lot, that the concept of having a crowd is important in crowdfunding, and it is. And a crowd is as Anthony's saying, it's your following, it's your fan base, and for some it's a natural synergy, like museums who attract that audience. But for a lot of us, it's a case of putting that groundwork in place ahead of crowdfunding. It's building up that crowd to make sure it's large enough so it will push you across that goal threshold. And yeah, so I think there is that misconception that you can launch a campaign and you will reach your goal, whereas the energy that I think needs to be driven into growing your crowd is one of the major preparation factors of going crowdfunding. And I think you were telling me recently, Anthony, that you can break it down into 3 different crowd types. You've got your crowd, which may be on your email list. You may have gathered those email addresses. They may be your social media following. It can take different forms, your community. But then you've also got your crowd's crowd. So for instance, you have your loyal following, but they've got theirs. And if you have a good enough relationship with your crowd, you have the potential to access their crowd as well. And I think the 3rd type of crowd you explained to me, Anthony, was the outside crowds, so such as bloggers and journalists and the press, and the ability to be able to connect with those people. And the sooner you can build that relationship, the more powerful it will be when you need it. It's about preparing all of this ahead of time, really. And if you are new to growing a crowd, and this is a new concept, our latest blog, or actually the one before, was our top 10 tips on growing a crowd for your crowdfunding campaign. So you might want to hop along to the Crowdfunding Academy website and check that out if you need any tips on getting started. But yeah,
the crowd is all important. Just when it comes to that 3rd crowd that you mentioned, these are other people's crowds, if you like. So a blogger has built up their own crowd. A journalist has got a crowd of people who would read their content. So the important thing is to develop a relationship with these people so that they can put your message in front of their crowds. And just one article from a journalist, one article from a blogger could push you right past your target. So why not develop a decent relationship with a few of these before you go crowdfunding? And it must all be done before you go crowdfunding, And it's becoming more and more difficult to get journalists to write about you. And for example, the journalists used to write a lot about crowdfunding campaigns as they were launching, but a lot of them will now only write about you once you've reached your target. So in other words, it'll give you extra publicity so that you can push past your target, go for that so-called crowdfunding stretch target. So think about developing those relationships, because fundamentally when it comes to your crowd, and this is a mistake a lot of people make, and that is strangers do not back crowdfunding campaigns. So there we go.
Crowd, tick. What else have you got, Anthony?
Right, let's have a look. Right, so another reason why campaigns fail, in my opinion, is, if you're going to raise 20,000 on Kickstarter, for example, you need to put in a certain amount of work before you launch the campaign. And then you put in a certain amount of work after the campaign, and then you put in a certain amount of work in delivering on what you promised. So those are the three components. And what a lot of people do is that they launch the campaign without preparing for it properly. So 80% of the work that you need to do to make your crowdfunding campaign successful needs to be done before you press that launch button. And so a lot of people scramble during the campaign to try and patch this all up. So one's got to realize that 80% of your effort needs to go in before. And you need to understand how that 80% is made up, and make sure that you get it all done beforehand. Because once you're running the campaign, you run off your feet.
Yeah, very true. And actually, I gave in our latest blog, mentioning blogs again, what is crowdfunding, a very general, but we aim for an ultimate guide on what is crowdfunding. We actually, towards the bottom of that blog, mention some of the success factors that Anthony's talking about that you need to prepare for ahead of time. So you, again, might want to go and have a look at those just to sort of give you a bit of an idea of what to expect.
Please do. You'll find that on the website under the blog tab. Now, the third thing that I've got on my list here as to why crowdfunding campaigns fail is that people set an unrealistic target. I've worked with hundreds of campaign or project creators over the years, and I have found that if you if you misjudge this, it has a large impact on your campaign. For example, I worked with a crowd that wanted $54,000 as their target, and when we had a closer look at their crowd, I felt that the crowd would only deliver on $6,000. So that was a big gap between $54,000 and $6,000. So when it actually came to the campaign, they insisted on putting $54,000 as a target, and at the end of the day, they raised $4,000. So had they had their target at $6,000 instead of $4,000, they would have raised that extra $2,000. So they misjudged their crowd. So in other words, they misjudged their crowd's ability to deliver on their target. And people, when they see your campaign page, will have a look at your target, and they'll make an instant judgment as to whether you're going to reach it or not. And if you're not likely to reach it, they're not going to back you, because people like to associate with success. So they want to know that you're already being successful. So that's important.
Anthony, what, in terms of when you launch a campaign, what proportion of the goal do you need to reach within a certain amount of time to increase your chances? I feel like you've given me a statistic on that before.
Another reason why campaigns fail is because they lack momentum within the first 48 hours of launching. So it's crucial that you reach a third of your target within 48 hours of launching. And if you don't do that, studies have shown that most crowdfunding campaigns are not likely to succeed. That doesn't mean to say you won't succeed, but the likelihood, there are too many other factors against you at that point. So, just to me, this is a wonderful way of figuring out whether you're choosing the right target or not. You know your crowd, and you know on the ability of your crowd to deliver on your targets. So, in your mind, once you have settled on a target, you need to say to yourself, well, will I be able to reach a third of this target within 48 hours of launching? And if the answer is no, then you've got to do one of two things. You either bring your target down, and if your project can't cope with you bringing your target down, then you've got to build your crowd until your crowd is big enough to deliver on the target that you require. So there we go.
Brilliant.
So that's an important factor. In fact, I think that is probably the most important. It helps crystallize the mind, as it were. So the next one there is rewards. So when it comes to rewards, people ultimately, they're going to watch your video, they're going to look at your campaign page, they're going to make an assessment on your target, and then under your target is normally the rewards. And if you don't have the reward, a reward your campaign, ultimately, most rewards-based crowdfunding campaigns are project-related. So in other words, you come up with a product-related, should I say, and that product is normally solving a problem. So that's very important, that the person who's looking at the reward says to themselves, that's going to solve my problem. So in other words, your idea must be crowdfundable, and in addition to that, it must be the right kind of reward that solves the problem that the person is up against. So in other words, the way you structure your rewards and the type of rewards that you offer must be related to your project, but that's ultimately why someone will get out their credit or debit card and support you, is because of the type of reward that you're going to have.
Absolutely.
And then obviously, I've got two more here. The next one there is having the right tools to run your crowdfunding campaign. Now, we offer a PDF which outlines the top tools that you can use. Now, I've spoken to hundreds of crowdfunders over the years, and they use an incredible wide range of tools, but there are, say, like the top 7 tools that you should be using to run a crowdfunding campaign. And to me, probably the most important out of all of them is what email marketing program email marketing service are you using? Because emails is the most important converting factor when it comes to a crowdfunding campaign. So to me, the top tool is going to be your email marketing tool. So what is that? Is it MailChimp, or is it something else? So you need to really have chosen an email marketing service provider, the right one, and not only that, understand a little bit about how email marketing works, because if that's going to convert more people into backers than anything else, then you need the right tool for that. What tool do you use, Ali?
That's a good question. Previously MailChimp, but now ConvertKit. And I'd be really interested in hearing the tools that the community are using. So if you are using a tool that's different to MailChimp, or even if it's MailChimp, just comment below, because it could inspire someone else in their research of a good tool that they could use. And me, it would inspire me. Very good,
very good. And then the last one that I want to touch on here, I mean, we could go on for a long time as to why campaigns fail, but to me the last one here, just very briefly, very quickly, is your story. You know, the quickest way for someone to get to know, like, and trust you is to listen to a well-crafted story. And that well-crafted story is delivered via video. So it all depends on how you structure that video. So you need to understand how to structure a good crowdfunding video. And on top of it, you've got to star in your own video, but you've got to have a good story. You've got to explain a situation, the pain point, the frustrations that it results in, and how you solve it, and what you're going to do to solve it. And it's either a product or service that's going to solve it, and the way you bring it across is very important. So I think that maybe we'll do that another time and on another live. We'll go through what's the makeup of an ideal crowdfunding story, but that's for another time. Ali, any other suggestions? I think that wraps it up for today.
I think it does, yeah. I think from the story front, being personable and putting yourself out there, as uncomfortable as it may be, will make all the difference. And to do research, look at crowdfunding videos that are out there and get a sense of whether you feel that they've done it justice. Again, on our website under resources, there's a gathering of a bunch of crowdfunding videos that we would recommend you be inspired by. So you could always head to the website and resources. But yeah, I think, wraps it up nicely, Anthony.
Yes, well, great. Please comment below in the feed. Any other questions that may have arisen from what we've discussed with you today, or any other questions that you want us to answer. And we'll endeavour to see you next week.